Imagine waking up tomorrow in medieval England. No smartphone alarm, just the monastery bells marking dawn. Your mattress? Gone. You're lying on a straw-filled sack that's probably home to a few mice. And that coffee you need to start your day? It won't exist in Europe for another few centuries. You don't learn this in history classes out there, but here's the real kicker. Your survival doesn't depend on finding the nearest Starbucks. It depends on whether you can haul yourself out of that bed and work from sunrise to sunset, handling tasks that would make your gym workout look like child's play. The average medieval peasant lifted and carried over a ton of weight every single day just to maintain their farm. You don't learn this in history classes out there, and that's just the beginning. While you're checking your social media feeds and ordering DoorDash, medieval men were mastering skills that meant the difference between life and death. They could navigate by the stars, build shelters from raw materials, and defend their families with weapons they forged themselves. No YouTube tutorials, no WikiHow articles, just pure, hard-earned knowledge passed down through generations. Think you could handle it? Let's find out. Let's talk about what your body would actually face in medieval times. Forget your standing desk and ergonomic chair. Medieval life was a constant workout that would break most modern fitness influences. The average medieval farmer burned around 4,000 to 5,000 calories daily just to survive. Picture this. Your day starts by hauling water from the village well. That's about 40 pounds per bucket, and your family needs at least 6 trips before breakfast. Then there's ploughing. No tractors, just you, and maybe an ox if you're lucky. The plough itself weighs around 75 pounds, and you're pushing it through heavy soil for 12 hours. Your Peloton sessions aren't looking so tough now, are they? But here's where it gets interesting. Medieval men developed specific physical adaptations we rarely see today. Skeletal remains show they had bone density that would put modern athletes to shame. Their forearm bones were consistently thicker on one side, evidence of repetitive, intense physical labor from childhood. You don't learn this in history classes out there. Meanwhile, modern men are facing a crisis of physical decline. Average testosterone levels have dropped by about 1% per year since 1980. The average hand grip strength, a key indicator of overall physical capability, has plummeted. We've engineered physical challenge out of our lives so thoroughly that our bodies are literally becoming weaker with each generation. The medieval man didn't need a gym membership. His entire life was resistance training, cardiovascular exercise, and functional fitness rolled into one brutal package. Tools were heavier, clothes were heavier, try wearing chainmail for a day, and even simple tasks like making bread required significant physical effort. A single session of threshing wheat separating grain from chaff would constitute a full-body workout that would leave most CrossFit enthusiasts gasping for air. Think your protein shake and meal prep routine is hardcore? Medieval nutrition would flip your modern diet upside down. Here's a reality check. The average medieval peasant consumed around 4,000 calories daily, but not from protein bars and supplement powders. We're talking about coarse bread that could crack teeth, pottage, basically a perpetual stew, and whatever vegetables they could grow. The real kicker? They were healthier than most of us. Medieval teeth show less decay than modern mouths, despite having zero dental care. Why? No processed sugar. Their gut bacteria diversity would embarrass our sanitized digestive systems. Modern food scientists are just now discovering that their fermented foods and varied diet created a robust microbiome that protected them from numerous diseases. But here's where it gets interesting. Medieval men understood something we've forgotten. Food isn't supposed to be available 24/7. Their bodies adapted to natural cycles of feast and famine. During harvest, they'd feast like kings. During winter, they might go days eating nothing but dried beans and hard bread. This natural intermittent fasting kept their metabolism sharp and bodies lean. You don't learn this in history classes out there? Compare that to today, where we've got guys crushing their 4th delivery meal of the day while complaining about their gut health. The average modern man consumes more sugar in a week than a medieval person would see in a year. We've got more food variety than any medieval king could dream of, yet we're plagued with dietary diseases they never experienced. Want a medieval food hack that would shock modern nutritionists? They drank ale instead of water, not to get drunk, but because the fermentation process made it safer than most water sources, kids included. And that ale had more nutrients than most modern health drinks. Let's talk survival. And I don't mean your phone battery dying at 2%. Medieval survival was a daily practice, not a weekend hobby. Every medieval man was essentially a walking survival encyclopedia. They could read weather patterns better than our modern meteorologists. Just by looking at the sky and observing animal behavior, they could predict storms days in advance with shocking accuracy. You don't learn this in history classes out there. Think about your morning routine. You check your weather app, set your smart thermostat, and order groceries online. Medieval man? He's already identified 5 edible plants on his way to work, noticed wolf tracks near the village, and adjusted his day's labor based on approaching weather. His survival database was stored in his head, not in the cloud. Here's something wild. Medieval people could navigate vast distances without a single map. They used a complex mental framework of landmarks, stars, and natural features. Some could travel hundreds of miles and return home using skills we've completely lost. Their brains actually developed different neural pathways for navigation than our GPS-dependent minds. You don't learn this in history classes out there. But the real survival gap shows up in crisis situations, when disaster struck, be it flood, famine, or invasion. Medieval communities knew exactly what to do. Every person had practical skills that contributed to group survival. They could build emergency shelters from scratch, preserve food without electricity, and create basic tools from raw materials. Today, we've got survival shows on Netflix, but can't start a fire without a lighter. We've got emergency services on speed dial, but wouldn't know how to treat a basic wound without Google. The average medieval teenager knew more about practical survival than most modern survival course instructors. The kicker is how they viewed nature. We see it as something to conquer or avoid. They understood it as a complex system they were part of. They could read animal behavior patterns, understand plant cycles, and work with natural rhythms in ways our modern minds can barely comprehend. Each season brought its own challenges and opportunities, and they knew them all by heart. Let's address the elephant in the room. Medieval people didn't have work-life balance because work wasn't something separate from life. It was life. And here's the mind-blowing part. Archaeological evidence shows that medieval peasants typically worked fewer hours than modern Americans, but they never stopped being productive. Even their downtime was spent making tools, repairing clothes, or preparing for the next day. Forget about Monday blues or hump day. Medieval folk didn't even have weekends as we know them. But here's the twist, they had a different relationship with work entirely. Every task had immediate visible results. Plow a field? You'd see the furrows. Build a wall? It's right there, protecting your family. Their work had direct meaning, unlike pushing papers in a cubicle hoping for a quarterly bonus. Mental toughness? They wrote the book on it. Imagine living in a world where every decision could mean life or death. No safety nets, no insurance policies, no government bailouts. A single bad harvest could mean starvation. Yet, medieval records show remarkably low rates of what we'd now call anxiety and depression. You don't learn this in history classes out there. Today, we've got meditation apps and stress management workshops. Medieval folks? They processed trauma and stress through community, physical work, and a deep understanding that life was inherently challenging. They didn't expect comfort. They expected struggle and were mentally equipped for it. Here's something that'll blow your mind. Medieval people had a concept called productive suffering. They believed that facing hardship head-on made you stronger, wiser, and more capable. Compare that to our modern obsession with avoiding any form of discomfort. We've created a society where minor inconveniences are treated like major crises. But perhaps the biggest difference was their sense of purpose. Every medieval man knew exactly why he was working: to feed his family, protect his community, and leave something for the next generation. There was no existential crisis about career paths or finding your passion. Your work was your passion because it kept you and your loved ones alive. Think you're tough because you powered through a cold to make a Zoom meeting? Medieval health challenges would like a word. Here's a shocker. Despite what you've heard about medieval filth, they actually had complex hygiene systems. Public bathhouses were common in towns and most people washed daily, just differently than we do. The real kicker? Their immune systems were absolute fortresses. Let's talk medical care. No WebMD, no urgent care clinics, not even a basic aspirin. Medieval folks had to be their own doctors most of the time. Every household knew dozens of medicinal herbs and their uses. That useless plant you're trying to kill in your backyard? Medieval people probably used it to treat 3 different ailments. Their medical knowledge was so sophisticated that modern pharmaceutical companies are still studying their herbal remedies. But here's where it gets wild. Medieval people had surgical procedures that would make modern doctors sweat. Skull trepanation, literally drilling holes in the skull, had a surprisingly high survival rate. And get this, they performed cataract surgery using a needle to push the clouded lens aside. Without anesthesia. You don't learn this in history classes out there. Modern man catches a sniffle? Time for Dayquil and delivery apps? Medieval man? He's crushing herbs, brewing remedies, and probably still heading out to work the fields. They didn't have the luxury of sick days. Their approach to pain and discomfort was radically different. They saw it as a natural part of life, not something to be eliminated at all costs. Think about it. We've got guys popping pills for every minor ache, while medieval people were setting their own broken bones and cauterizing wounds with hot iron. They weren't superhuman. They just understood that survival sometimes meant gritting your teeth and pushing through. Here's a reality check. In medieval times, being a warrior wasn't a video game class selection or a weekend hobby. By age 7, most boys were already learning weapon handling as part of daily life. Not because they wanted to, but because their survival depended on it. Archaeological evidence shows that the average medieval peasant had more combat training than many modern soldiers. The medieval world wasn't divided into fighters and non-fighters. Every man was expected to be combat ready. Farmers? They practiced with weapons after working the fields. Craftsmen? They kept weapons in their workshops. Merchants? They trained in self-defense to protect their goods. A typical medieval man could switch from peaceful craftsman to defender of his community in seconds. But here's what's fascinating. Medieval combat wasn't about showing off or proving something. It was ruthlessly practical. They didn't train in fancy moves or flashy techniques. They learned what worked, and they learned it through brutal trial and error. Their fighting systems were so effective that modern military units still study medieval combat manuals. Compare that to today, where most guys think self-defense means having a security system and living in a good neighborhood. We've outsourced our personal security to others so completely that basic self-defense skills have become specialized knowledge instead of common sense. The medieval approach to conflict wasn't just about fighting, it was about awareness. They understood that the best defense was avoiding trouble in the first place. But when trouble came, they didn't have the luxury of waiting for someone else to handle it. No calling 911, no security cameras, no panic buttons. Just you, your neighbors, and whatever weapons you had on hand. Forget everything you know about personal space and me time. Medieval life was a masterclass in community interdependence. Here's something mind-blowing. Medieval villages had a social support system so effective that homelessness was practically non-existent. When someone's house burned down, the entire community would rebuild it, usually within days. You don't learn this in history classes out there. The medieval man wasn't just responsible for himself and his immediate family. He was part of a complex web of mutual obligations. Your neighbor's problem? That was your problem too. Their harvest failed? You shared yours. Their barn needed raising? Everyone showed up. Not because they were saints, but because next time it could be you needing help. Here's the kicker about medieval community life. They had something we've almost completely lost: real social consequences. You couldn't just ghost your responsibilities and move to another city. Your reputation was your currency, and everyone knew exactly what kind of person you were. Medieval records show that social pressure was more effective at maintaining order than any law enforcement. Compare that to today, where we've got thousands of social media friends, but barely know our next-door neighbours. We've created a world where it's possible to be completely isolated while being constantly connected. Medieval folk would find our version of community absolutely bizarre, all surface, no substance. But perhaps the most striking difference was in how they viewed individual success. In medieval times, personal achievement meant nothing if it didn't benefit your community. A skilled craftsman wasn't just making products. He was training the next generation, contributing to community projects, and maintaining crucial knowledge for everyone's survival. So, would a modern man survive in medieval times? The hard truth is that most of us wouldn't make it past the first month. And it's not just about the physical challenges, it's about a completely different mindset that we've lost. Medieval people had something we've traded away for comfort. They were complete human beings, capable of handling almost any situation life threw at them. Think about everything we've covered. The physical demands that would break most gym enthusiasts. The survival skills that went far beyond Bear Grylls-style TV shows. The mental toughness that didn't need therapy apps or motivational podcasts. The community bonds that made social media look like a pale imitation of real human connection. But here's the real verdict. Medieval people weren't superhuman. They were just humans operating at their full potential, something most of us haven't experienced in generations. The average medieval peasant had more practical skills than a modern survival expert, more physical capability than a gym rat, and more mental resilience than a motivational speaker. The most damning evidence? They could lose everything and rebuild from scratch. Most of us can barely handle a power outage or a broken smartphone.